Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hey, Steve.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Adrian.
Adrian,
Hey,
welcome.
Hi, Wayne.
Hello, how you going?
I'm all right. Yeah, good. How are you?
Yeah, good, good. Hello. Hello, Peter.
Hi,
Welcome.
Wayne.
Hello.
Thank you.
Two Peters. We'll just give a couple more minutes for people to join the call. Sounds very evangelical. Join the call.
Forward. Answer the call.
Answer the call.
Yeah.
Join it, answer it.
You're not playing enough music, mate. You need to play a bit of organ.
I don't have a smoke machine or skinny jeans. Sorry.
I'm happy. I'm a sucker for, oh, to Jesus I surrender.
There's your childhood just there.
To hear my something bring.
Something.
Yeah, it's all there. Waiting to come out. He's sort of locked in a cage at the moment. I've learnt that you can't do that to your past, that it will find voice.
Yeah. One way or another.
How's Monday morning there, Adrian?
It's all right. It's quite nice, actually.
The sun looks like the sun's out, or is that just a UV lamp to make it look like?
No. It's the sun is out. It's a bit cloudy.
Yeah.
Autumn is here.
I'm struggling with your hair. It's awfully short, dude.
It is, yeah.
I'm not used to that.
It's someone with so much hair, yes.
When did you
Well, that was lockdown for you.
Oh, yeah.
Hair clippers instead of hairdressers.
Yeah. So it wasn't about being locked up, and so you sort of thought like a criminal. I might just that sort of thing. Yeah. Fair enough.
In many ways.
No,
but it's cooling down now.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's going the other way. Yeah.
We're at the opposite end of the spectrum, as it were.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I've got to turn my pasta off.
Oh.
Your pasta? Okay. Yeah, there was a few more. Anyway, I'll just give them a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
See who rocks on up.
So are you just coming out of winter?
Yeah, so it's spring here. It's really blustery today. It's actually been a strange sort of September for us because it's had cold snaps and a bit rainy at times, and so it's a bit unusual. But in the next month it'll get hot, very hot. Before too long.
How hot?
Very hot. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Depends on your perspective. It's all relative, right?
Yeah, but from our perspective, anything over about 35 is boiling, so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. True. Changes view. Welcome, Richard. Wherever you are.
Thank you, Wayne.
Hey, Richard.
Hello.
Hello, Richard.
Hello, Peter. Hello, you glorious-headed Benjamin.
How are you, mate? Been a while.
Apart from having hair envy, I'm doing well.
Yeah. Gotta have something.
That's a theme. There's a theme going on here.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've already mentioned Adrian's hair tonight.
Oh, Adrian, you're there.
I'm back.
It's good to see you, sir. That's a very big cup.
Yeah, it needs to be. It's morning here.
Yes.
Oh, it's coffee. It's coffee, is it?
Coffee, yeah.
How un-English of you. It should be tea.
I know.
It's funny though. My mum's a Pom, and she drank black coffee her whole life and doesn't drink tea at all. So there is a cohort, isn't there?
A very small one, I'd say.
Okay, good. Just my mum.
Probably.
My father was a fierce Anglophile, so we've drunk tea from a teapot with fresh leaves my whole life.
Oh, that's proper. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Warm the pot first.
Oh, that's it.
And in winter, warm the cups and saucers as well. And only ever cups and saucers.
My God.
That's a lot of work.
That's posh tea.
When we lived in the UK, we drank Yorkshire tea, which is everywhere, which is where Adrian is. But
we grow a lot of tea here.
but we couldn't find it here. But they have tea bags up here, Yorkshire tea bags, but not the leaf. But we discovered in Adelaide they have the leaf. So I've got my sister-in-law to send about 6 bags of tea up in the post. So.
Fantastic.
6 bags.
Yes. I drink Yorkshire tea bags. That's my tea of choice if I'm drinking tea bag tea.
Yorkshire water as well.
Oh,
what is Yorkshire tea like? Is it like
robust?
Awesome. It's great. It's
real black tea, strong.
My dad says it's girly tea or builder's tea. They're the 2 types.
It's builder's tea.
It's definitely builders. Yeah.
Definitely builder's tea. None of this perfume nonsense.
Exactly.
Grown on the slopes of the Pennines.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a funny thing, isn't it? Why do they call it Yorkshire tea? I don't know, but it seems to work. They convinced me.
Yeah, absolutely. It works for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I have a strange line that goes through my head when I think of Yorkshire. It's one-armed flail rod's gone out of skew on treadle. It's a Monty Python sketch, which of course they've done the 4 Yorkshiremen as well. I have no idea what you're talking about. In Yorkshire, they just leave out most of the words.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we go down to pub. Yeah.
Yeah, we go down to pub.
Get in car, go work.
Get in car.
Get in car, go to work. Pub. Have the tea. Watch telly.
Well, we've got a few people on, and there's probably going to be some more that drop in as we go. But just to start off, I just wanted to welcome everyone. Thank you for all being here. Thank you, Adrian, for giving up some of your time to be with us with your coffee. Just to start off, a few things that are going on, just to sort of keep you up to date with some stuff that's happening. So sort of our next big thing is Younger Men's Rites Passage, which will be in November. And we're all gearing up for that, and that's all sort of forging ahead in spite of COVID that's tried to stop us. We are going to hold these events, so these are evening with events. We're going to continue to hold those virtually. We decided, welcome Shane, until we decide, until there's a vaccine, and then we can sort of meet safely without any concerns. So at least for the rest of this year and probably into the start of next year, we will continue to meet in this format. We're just about to do another fundraising appeal, which we will send a letter out in the next couple of weeks, just to help us get over the line financially. And yeah, other things where we'll have an AGM at the end of the year. So there's a few things here and there, but we'll send stuff out as it develops. I was going to say something and I've forgotten what it was. So tonight we've been doing these virtual interviews for a little while. Something a bit different tonight. We're actually going to have some polls. So you may see on your screen a little a question come up. You can answer it or you don't have to answer it, whatever you choose to do. But it'll just help get some interaction with the stuff we're going to talk about, and just help to sort of get some sort of buy-in and some, yeah, we're going to try it, see if it works. So to start with, I wondered if we could do a quick check-in. There's a lot of us have a lot going on. There's a lot of terrible news. You know, COVID's getting better here. I don't know in the UK how it is for you, Adrian, but it's sort of disparaging. So I wondered if we could just go around the Zoom room and 2 things you're grateful for. It can be something very simple. It doesn't have to be complex, but just 2 things that you're grateful for today, that you have today that you're grateful for. And I might just go around as it is on my screen, just to make it a bit sort of easier. And so that would be Ben, who is in my Brady Bunch screen.
I have to look up. If I look that way, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I'll look down and I'll look.
So yeah, I wasn't listening. So yeah, just a check-in, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Grateful for.
Something I'm grateful for.
So, I'm grateful. Sorry. I'm such a good listener. I'm grateful for I guess right now I'm very attached to, I'm in a very strong learning phase, so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be learning and absorbing just tons of content and information. I'm doing counseling, a grad dip in counseling, and I'm just currently in an intensive 4-day intensive, so I'm just absorbing so much, and I find it really exhausting, but I'm really enjoying that, and I love that I'm getting to do this. And I love that I can stop learning and go down to the beach, and I'm just like about a 3-minute ride on my bike to the beach, to the surf, and I love that. I love that today again, for the kind of like for the first time again, just realized what a great spot I'm in, and it does keep me a bit sane. So yeah, that's my 2.
Thank you. Peter Gilmore, go to you.
Here we go. Yeah, first thing would be next week we're going to meet up with my daughter and her family in Kingscliff. So she's coming up from Sydney, and we're crossing the line to go down to Kingscliff. And yeah, we've been plotting this for weeks and weeks. We haven't seen them since early May. And yeah, I've got 2 4-year-old granddaughters, so it's going to be a good time. I think we're all excited about it. We've been planning away and discussing it, and so we've had some really good family time together over the phone, and really looking forward to touching base with them when we get there next on the weekend. And the second thing was today, I had a Netflix movie recommended to me, and I thought, oh yeah, well, okay, I'll have a look at it. It was from a guy in another men's group, and it was called My Octopus Teacher. And I was absolutely blown away by this movie about this fellow that was in a midlife crisis kind of thing, and he very briefly took up skin diving, snorkeling, to go in the ocean. And every day he would go and he met up with this octopus, and he observed the octopus for several days straight, several days in a row. And this went on for over a year. And in the end, this octopus became almost a really dear friend of his, and would reach out, and he'd touch his hands and the octopus would touch his hands. And by the end of the movie, well, I won't spoil the movie, but it was just terrific, this relationship that developed over time, and how this fellow let himself go, and he learned how to serve the skills that this octopus knew in life, which were just absolutely amazing and very, very, very complex. So that's what I learned. So,
yeah, that was an amazing documentary. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's brilliant. Thanks, Peter. Thanks. We might go to Richard Fay.
I realised that I've carried something for 11 years now, and it's left me. That when I burned out in 2009 and discovered that people who are trained to be clergymen aren't very good at anything else, if that's all they've trained for. And that's a scary proposition when you turn 50 and you realise you've got no other real qualifications for any trade, business practice or anything. And it's nice, it's lovely to be able to say 11 years later, I've answered the question, I've settled in a place where I'm able to provide and find real fulfillment in my working life. And while I might have been able to say it a year or 2 or 3 ago, I feel it now. I feel it in my bones. So I'm very grateful that when everything in my life turned pear-shaped in the middle of it, that as I reach not far off whatever would normally be considered retirement, that it's not a shambolic mess, but something that I can call mine, and an expression of my uniqueness and giftedness in the world, which is a very wonderful thing to be able to say. The other thing I'm grateful for are our brothers at the monastery in Victoria, the Holy Transfiguration Monastery. I received a message from Brother Paul there this morning, who did the crosses, the holding crosses for our rites in August. And just a beautiful message. He also sent a whole lot of photos of the monastery covered in snow, which happened last Friday. The monastery, at only 200 meters above sea level, got a cover of snow last Friday, which didn't happen all winter and rarely ever happens. And so it was lovely to see that. And I'm just grateful for the brothers and sisters at that monastery and the exquisite hospitality they offer, and their simple and profoundly deep ways of being.
Thank you. Peter Woodward.
I've just spent a week away with the whole family, which includes 8 grandchildren. Brought me to the edge of burnout because that's exhausting. But I am so grateful for them, because I reflect on my own childhood, which was virtually without grandparents, and had one grandfather that I remember. The rest of his grandparents I don't have any memory of. And then particularly I'm thankful for my wife. She was due to have a gallbladder removed tomorrow, but she's an asthmatic, and she's just not serious asthmatic, but she's got a bit of asthma at the moment. And I realised that going into surgery when you've got a lung condition is just a bit difficult. And I want her around for quite some more years yet. And that's it. Yeah, it's good to have a wife like the wife I've got. So a week away with family. And incidentally, that was to celebrate my wife's 70th birthday, which is a couple of weeks away, but we did it over school holidays. So yeah, that's my little thankfulness.
Thanks, Peter. Awesome. Felipe, hello, my friend.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Two things that I'm grateful for. I am grateful to have chosen to come to Australia and make Australia my country. Yeah, that's something that I've been thinking, especially with COVID-19 hitting, and I'm actually, wow, I did a good decision. So I'm thankful for that decision that I made. And I'm also thankful that my brother had COVID and he's okay now. And at the same time, thinking about the disease, my brother in Brazil, my father is also facing prostate cancer, and he's 80s. He's on his 80s, and it's very, very, as the doctor said, he's not going to die from cancer, but the treatment might kill him before. But looks like the worst has passed, and all my family and myself are impressed on how strong my father is. So I end up giving you three things that I'm grateful for.
Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. We're glad you moved here too. Shane.
Yeah, hey, I'm grateful for a loving family, and very grateful that my wife, who broke her ankle some weeks ago, is making a good steady recovery, and without any hiccups along the way. And we're also in transition with our another company taking over our practice, and it's turbulent but progressing in a positive direction. So very grateful for that as well.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Shane. Rex. Hello, hello.
Sorry.
It's all good. We just ask you, well, our check-ins, just two things you're grateful for.
Well, to be honest, I got my Lions tickets to the preliminary final today, so I'm grateful for getting those. So I've done that. But just hearing Philippe, his story there. Philippe, I'm a survivor of prostate cancer, so there is hope. Yeah.
Thanks, Rex. Awesome. Wayne Kruger.
Good evening, all. Sorry I joined so late.
That's okay. So we're just doing a check-in of two things you're grateful for.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for my wife, for her having understanding and compassion for the time that it takes with me juggling work and study. So I'm very grateful for my wife and supporting me in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful for technology, being able to communicate with people that haven't been able to for some time, and that's allowed that to happen.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Wayne. Adrian, I think. Just Adrian.
Yeah, I'm grateful for where I live. I live in a valley just outside the city, and during lockdown, it made life bearable to be able to walk every day into the valley, then there's a lot of cattle and sheep and a lot of animals, a lot of wildlife. And the other thing is, we've just lost 2 cats, 1-2 weeks after the other, who we've had around us for 18 years. So I'm grateful for their companionship. They're funny animals, cats, but they get under your skin. And so we buried them together. They were born under my daughter's bed. They lived in the same place, and they died within 2 weeks with each other. So Noah and Rosie. So that's what I'm grateful for.
Very nice. Thanks, Adrian. Me, at the moment, I'm grateful for the poetry of Rilke. I've really connected with Rilke lately, and I'm sure it will become it will become more obvious why that is. And the other thing is, the team we have for Younger Men's never ceases to amaze me, their degree of sacrifice and willingness, and their tenacity to push on, and their willingness to be vulnerable is something that inspires me, and just something I'm really grateful for. Well, thank you, everyone. What we might do, have I make sure I haven't missed anyone. Has anyone not spoken? Not said what they're grateful for? I think that's everyone. We're just going to have a couple of minutes of meditation or contemplative prayer, or whatever language you want to use. And this is for the purpose of connecting with us and the other, and the great beyond. Nouwen says it's through contemplation, meditation, that we actually connect with our truer selves, and we think we separate us it separates us from the universe and everyone else, but it actually connects us like a wagon wheel. It brings us to the center of things. So we'll just do a couple of minutes. I'll ring a bowl, and then we will come back. Welcome, Max. Sorry. So welcome a few more people that chimed in while we are in our silence. Thank you. Welcome Simon, Malky, Wayne again. Welcome, Max. It's good you could all be here. So tonight we are talking to Adrian. He's going to instill some mighty wisdom on us, like Gandalf or something. So, my first question for Adrian is, who is Adrian Scott? Where are you from? What's your background? And how did you get into this men's work?
I'm glad you qualified the question. Who is Adrian Scott? Because that's a tough one.
Yeah.
So my background, I come from the city of Sheffield, which is a a steel town in the north of England. I had quite an easy childhood until the age of 9, when my father, who had been, he came from the northeast of England, a place called Ashington, and it was either go down the mine, be on the buses, or join the services. So he joined the Navy, and he served in the Navy for nearly 30 years. He was sunk on an aircraft carrier in 1942 in the Indian Ocean. He smoked at 60 a day. I think he suffered from PTSD, liked to drink. And when I was 9, he had a stroke and was quite debilitated, and made a reasonable recovery. But that was the first moment in my life when I realized that things go wrong with people that are irrevocable. And then when I was 11, nearly 12, he had a massive heart attack and died. He was 20 years older than my mum. And she really struggled through my teenage years with grief. They put her on all kinds of Valium and things like that to deal with the grief. And it didn't really work. And when I was 16, 17, she had a major breakdown and ended up in a mental hospital for about 3 or 4 months. I'm an only child. So all of that left me with a lot of questions about life and my place in the world. I didn't do very well at school. And that sent me on a kind of journey trying to work out what the meaning of all this is. I used to lay awake when I was at, I got a job in a men's clothes shop. I know it's hard to believe looking at me, but, I used to come home and think, is this it? What is this it then? That this is what life is about, work and be meeting someone that might love me, I might love them. And so when I was 20, I discovered Christianity and became a Catholic, and thought I'd solved it all and that I'd found all the answers. Obviously, didn't quite turn out that way. I trained to be a priest. I did 5 years of training, but realized more and more that I could not live within the confines of strict Catholicism, and would have ended up, if I got ordained, fighting with the church for the rest of my life. So left, got married. I've worked in community development and spirituality for most of my working life. And around the year 2000, I discovered Richard Rohr, which was quite a revelation to me. He was someone that I felt like he spoke the same language as I did, and expressed things in ways that I could understand. So I contacted him to come and speak to a conference that I was organizing, helping to organize. And he said, if you ever need a retreat, just let me know. So I did, and I went and had a week's retreat with him, which he guided me on, which I was amazed that he did it. And he suggested that I might be interested in the men's work. So that summer I took my family out to New Mexico. That's in 2002 then. And did the rites of passage at Ghost Ranch with 120 other men, mainly Americans. And it was a powerful revelatory experience to me. I'd always had trouble with men. I didn't relate very easily to older men. I think I'd always been searching for a father figure and felt very let down a lot of the time. So this was a a breaking open of my understanding of myself as a man. So that's.
I'm always curious about why people pursue what they pursue. Like, there must have been something different about you because your environment wasn't necessarily one about pursuing the truth or the meaning of things. Maybe. What do you think made you different?
Well, it's interesting. I do think that most people at some point will ask questions. Often when presented with a liminal time in their life, somebody dies or they get ill. I don't know what made me so tenacious to keep asking. My best friend from when I was young, he's become a Buddhist. So, and he came from a similar background to me. I think I've always been a kind of restless person. I've never been satisfied with easy answers. So, and I don't know whether I inherited that from my parents. My dad went all over the world in the Navy. My mum was they were lower middle class, upper working class people. They liked to read books. They weren't highly educated. So I don't know. But it's been with me from very young. That idea, what is this all about? Why are we here?
Excellent. I'm going to throw to Ben. Ben's going to ask you a question now. Ben.
So hi everyone. I'm not sure if everyone knows me or why I'm here, but anyway, my name's Ben, and I lived in the UK for a long time, and actually I did my rites in 2012, and Adrian was the weaver. I don't remember a thing he said, you know.
Good.
Stop asking me questions, Wayne.
Sorry, that's my bad.
Your timing's unimpeccable. I'm gonna start lying about how many times I've meditated in a minute.
I'm forcing you to, make another decision. Sorry, continue.
What are the results? What are the results of that poll? What's the average meditation length?
I actually realised that I messed it up because I stopped it when I should have actually just gone to the next question. Anywho, I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, let's forget that. It was my idea to do the polls, and
it's your fault.
I'm wanting Wayne to suffer. Anyway, okay. The two people that answered.
There was more than that originally. Anyway, sorry. Okay. Continue.
Anyway, so Wayne and I kind of led the Young Men's Rites, the first one here last year, and that for me was a culmination of having been involved in the first Young Men's Rites in the UK in 2014. So it's been a great sort of journey for me when I moved back from the UK a couple of years ago to sort of bring the program as it kind of got formed up in the UK with me, and it's been such a kind of natural and just so satisfying to have that kind of nearly thrust in my face when I arrived. Is like, yeah, let's do this here, and so it's been great. Anyway, that's me and where I'm coming from. So I know something of how the UK sort of brought about the Younger Men's Rites and why we did it, and I know two of I'm just going to say this because I want Adrian to tell me otherwise if he has a different story, because as these things go, they're going to get framed in mythology. But the Andy Rain and Marty Toa I believe were really the kind of emotional motivators behind the younger men's rights happening in the UK. Andy Rain had young lads who needed an initiation, and together they really just pushed and enthused. And I remember Marty talking me into it, and I loved Marty, so that was an easy one. But I wasn't on the very first meeting, but Adrian was. But I think I was at the next planning weekend, where we went on site and did a lot of kind of just imagining what we could do. I was there when we discovered that there was a massive bog on site, and that we could maybe throw the young initiate into a real muddy bog, which was me in the end. So anyway, we wanted to just sort of throw to Adrian about some of what you bring to YM, Rob, and why you felt it was important to transition from, you'd been holding the big boy rights for a long time, and why you felt enthusiastic about holding a rights for younger men, and what was your experience and reasoning behind some of that?
Well, yeah, you were right about Marty and Andy. Two men from the northeast of England who were passionate. Marty was a youth worker, and Andy had a son that was coming up to 18, and they were both really passionate about what were we going to do for young men of that age. And also I was interested because in all the study I'd done and the work with Richard, that the older men's rites of passage was all derived from the original indigenous rites of passage, which were actually for young men. That men's rites of passage were taking a young man from childhood and adolescence into manhood. So it made sense to me when they kept, and Marty was tenacious. I mean, he just kept saying to all of us, we have to do something for these young men. And the thing that was pushing against that was Richard, Roar, and others saying, you can't initiate young men if there's no community to initiate them into. It takes a village to raise a child. That you have to, and I still have a lot of questions about this. You can't initiate someone into nothingness or into just one family. It has to be a sense of being initiated into a wider community of some kind. So Marty and Andy, in many ways, with the young men they were working with, had got that sense of a wider community. That the Northumbria men's group was very strong, and that there were a group of men to whom these younger men could relate and continue, because a rites of passage is not a one-off experience. It's a moment within a journey. Significant though it is, if it isn't rooted before and after in something, I think it just becomes a kind of an experience that you don't really know what to do with. So Andy and Marty pushed us, and then fortuitously at that time I'd invited Stephen Gamble, who came up with the original rituals for the rites of passage, and Jim Taylor, who was the Texas weaver, they were both from Texas, to come over in 2014. And it just was providential. We just thought, okay, as part of their visit, why don't we tap into, especially Stephen Gamble's ritual experience, to try and dream up how you would do this with young men. So there was Peter Fishpool, who's really pushed the young men's rights here, Andy Rain, Marty Tower, me, Jim, and Stephen Gamble. And we met in a cottage in Northumberland and sat down and just started to try and brainstorm and be creative about what the difference between the older men's rights and the younger men's rights might be. And one of the differences was that it needed to be more immediate and address young men where they are. And it should be more active, less sitting around and listening to one person like you're having to do now, and a lot more voices. So we definitely wanted to concentrate on the 5 hard messages and bring in as many different voices on the team as we possibly could, to address the young men with vulnerable experience and stories from our traditions that spoke to the transition that they were experiencing.
Yep. And I just wanted to add to that we was it the second year, I think, we had Adrian's son Tom come along as an initiate, and which was terrifying for us. So Adrian wasn't weaving that year as his son was there, and so those of us who were entrusted with Adrian Scott's son felt a little bit peeved, because it was like, golly, what if anything happens to this lad? We're in big strife. So we came to the night vigil, and we sent the lads out overnight, and in the next morning we called them all in with whistles or whatever, and everyone, all the young lads returned except for Tom Scott. And we're like starting to panic, going, oh my word, what's happened? Because he was diabetic, and we were like, oh my gosh, he's ended up having some kind of thing. We're gonna have to ring up Adrian and tell him his son's dead, and he didn't make it. Thankfully, he was hiding under some hollow somewhere and just hadn't heard the bells and was fast asleep. So anyway, we survived. But I just also wanted to introduce to you guys Simon, Ray, and Malky, who Malky's naked, so he's not showing his face. They're both up in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and they co-led the last younger men's rights in the UK. So they've been kind of holding the flame in the UK. So I invited them along tonight because we're priming up to do this another young men's rights in November. So anyway, that's, I think. Can
I just say about my son?
Yeah, do, yeah.
So,
it's a great story.
So Tom, just in case you think that Tom was some great, because he I've been a weaver and all that, he was really switched on and he knew exactly what was going on, and he absolutely didn't. He was diagnosed type 1 diabetic when he was 16. The absolute worst time in your life, in some ways, to be diagnosed like that. He really, really didn't deal with it well at all. We had real difficulties helping him to maintain his sugars. He, one Christmas, decided to stop taking insulin because he thought he wanted to be normal. Ended up in a thing called DKA, which is diabetic ketonic acidosis, which can kill you. He was in hospital for 5 days. It still didn't do anything. He started smoking weed. He started taking all kinds of other drugs, which I found about later. and was in a really difficult place. He'd been recommended by the diabetic team, a psychiatrist, who also put him on antidepressants. So he was taking a cocktail of things. And my wife said to him that Christmas before, why don't you do the Young Men's Rites of Passage? And to all of our surprise, he went, yeah, I think I will. I still didn't believe it. And then he signed, Marty rang him. He didn't even fill in the form. They did it on the phone. And the day I left to go up there, I still wasn't convinced that he would go. And he did. And it was with huge trepidation that I handed him over to Ben and the team. And I expected all the way through to get a phone call to say he's left. Because even on the way up, he was saying, I don't know what I'm doing this for. I don't believe in any of it anyway. He came back. I said, what did you think of it? And I could tell that something had affected him. About a fortnight later, I was sitting at the kitchen table and he came in and he went, that was a fucking waste of time. Nothing has changed. And his mum said to him, well, sometimes you have to do something to make that change. And he stomped out of the room. About a day later, he went into his bedroom and he spent 5 days telling us all where to go every time we knocked on the door. To the point where we phoned his diabetic specialist nurse and the mental health services, because we were really scared as to what was going on in there. I knocked on his door to say that the nurse was coming around to see us, and he was like, right, will you take me to the shop to buy some fags? So, cigarettes. So I went, oh, okay. And we drove up towards the shop. I said, Tom, we've all been really worried about you. You do realise you've been in your room for 5 days. He'd come out when we went to bed and get something to eat. And he said, yeah, I was sick of feeling numb, so I've stopped taking everything. So we went cold turkey on antidepressants and everything he'd been taking. And he's never taken anything since. And when you talk to him about the rites of passage, not much of what we said got through to him, but it was an unconscious level, almost subliminal. Something about what was done there got underneath his rational mind and into his deeper self. And he had a dream the night they woke him up from the dream that he was in the engine room of the ship with my father as it was sinking. And my father showed him the way out. And that was the dream he was awoken out of when they were looking for him. And he's been on a really slow journey since then, but it really did do something profound at a level below his consciousness.
Yeah.
It's kind of it was one of my most amazing experiences. Last year I was in the UK and I went to Adrian's and Tom was there, and he just started off his own volition saying how much the rites had changed his life. I think Simon was there as well. And he just spoke for about half an hour, just how it changed his life, how that was the moment where it all switched. And so it was such a special gift for me, for us to have it from his voice, from his mouth, that what we'd done and slaved and put hours into actually did something. Because we didn't see it at the time, so it's kind of comforting to have that. It's a great story. Where are we up to, Wayne?
So this you just stole my thunder. So the next question is a bit controversial, but what I wanted to ask was not just Younger Men's Rites of Passage, but Rites of Passage at all. Does it really make a difference? Because sometimes it feels like it doesn't, or sometimes, probably conveyed in the story you just told about Tom, it doesn't appear to immediately anyway. So any thoughts about that, Adrian?
I've got a lot of thoughts about that. I think it does make a difference, but I think that's only if people are prepared to use the experience, take the experience that they have, and continue to journey with it. One of the things that I've experienced in the men's work is that we quite often mistake involvement for transformation. Some men get really switched on by this. I did. I came back from the US to the UK determined to do this kind of work, and I did, and we built a reasonably robust organization, I think. But I've seen quite a lot of men who get heavily involved with leading things and doing things, but actually they mistake that for the transformation that goes on when you really engage with the deeper levels of yourself. Things like engaging with your shadow, understanding the feminine, facing up to that question that you asked at the beginning, who is Adrian Scott? I had and I don't want to preempt a question that you're going to ask later, but I had a fairly significant breakdown around the time of that, all of that going on, the young men's rights and weaving the older men's rights. And there were moments where I really didn't somehow know who I was anymore. I was unrecognizable to myself. And the helpful thing about the rites of passage and this work was that I knew something about liminality. I mean, I'd waxed lyrical and told 70 men at once how great liminal space was. When I was really in the middle of it, it was fucking horrible. I didn't like it one bit. I didn't know which way was up. It was hugely disorientating and really terrifying. However, because I had been given some of the stories and myths and done the rituals, those physical embodiments. I was a ritual elder before I was a weaver. Those physical embodiments of the type of transformation that we're talking about, like the grief ritual. I'd crawled along the floor on my belly, you know, and lifted up my hand looking for solace and found ashes, you know, and done that keening. I kind of knew that what the territory was. So I think that if as the question says, how does it make a difference? That is, to me, it gives you a template. It gives you a picture and a physical experience of what really difficult passages of life feel like and are like, and some kind of orientation that helps you steer your way through it. I don't think that I've got a lot of questions about the size of the rites of passage in terms of, I did my rites with 120 men, and there's a very powerful collective there that carried me through it, that meant I didn't have to do as much personal work as I should have done. And I have some questions about that, and I have some questions about how we move towards it and how men come out of it and what they do after. Because if we're not careful, it can just be a peak experience that doesn't get rooted in someone's actual everyday life. So I think it does make a difference. I think it's quite important. But I think we need to understand more clearly how it makes a difference.
Because in some ways it's easier to create an event than it is to create a structure or a community in which that can be reinforced and re-engaged in a way.
That's been the kind of ongoing question, I think, in the UK as well as it's becoming here, is what do we do with these younger men once we've smashed them? You know, we have like we have Facebook groups and stuff, but you know, like they're a kind of different cohort. They communicate differently and about different things, and it's how do you communitize them? Is that, I've just made that word up.
Yes, you did.
You can use that word whenever you like.
Thanks. Great copyright.
Yeah.
We just started a group because one of the younger men wanted a group of younger men, but one of the things we engage is anxiety. It seems like this generation has so much more social anxiety. I think, I might be wrong, so much more social anxiety than I was at their age. And maybe technology's got something to do with that, but it's really hard to get them, you know, the fear of missing out, but also the fear of better options. You know, sometimes they don't commit to stuff because they might have a better option. So it's challenging.
Which is why it's so hard to actually hold this program, because the UK, I mean, I flew all the way to the UK last year to help run the program, and it got cancelled because the buggers got better options, you know. But it's going to be an ongoing challenge for this age group, because they're in a different space. But
so older men is herding cats, younger men's herding kittens.
Can I make a quick observation? Like Adrian, I travelled to the US to do my rites of passage in 2016, and then came back with Rob Jones from the US, and we started the men's rites of passage. And I've been involved in most of those, in fact, in all of them, except two. And my observation is that unless men have something to come back to after MROC, they have connection with a small group or a Zoom, if it has to be a link up, they very soon lose the ember that they got at the rites. That's in the older men. And I think it would be even more critical for the young men, because I think older men have more of an understanding of what life's about than a younger man. I'm just making that contribution.
Yeah, I agree, Max. It's challenging, and Rob's asked the question all the time: what are we initiating men into? Which is this essential question, I think, that we need to continue to ask and to try and find ways to make it work, I think. Yeah.
Which kind of, do you want me to, so I thought this is kind of an interesting, it is a nice segue into this question around longevity and yeah, where are we going with the work that's done? And I remember young guys on our rights in the UK asking the question about do you have to have a crisis? Do you a crisis? Do you have to have it? What do I do? And Wayne, I remember telling the story. What do I need to do to avoid having a breakdown, or having a midlife crisis, or, you know, this is and actually my experience having done the rites was, I'm going to get all my ducks in line. I'm going to do whatever I can so that I'm good, man. I don't want to collapse, right? So, you know, I remember saying to Adrian a long time ago, you know, my dream, right, is to get old and wise and everything gets smoother and easier, and I'm just like, I'm sorted, right? Because I'm meditating, I'm reflecting, contemplating, doing all the work, so I can just, I'm Gandalf, you know, on steroids. And I remember saying this to Adrian, and he's like, he gave me a response that I still don't like. Thanks, Adrian.
What was it?
It's basically, we get weaker, we get more frail. We get, yeah. It's not like that. We don't get better. So what are we doing? What's the point? You know, like, it's a tough space, but why pretend? It's like, you know, I think my Christianity experience was trying to tell me that if I give myself, my heart to the Lord, everything's rosy, you know, and it's bullshit. And it's the same with this work. If you do a rites and do your work, it's life doesn't get great all of some magic trick. It's still, you still get frail. So what's that about, Adrian?
Yeah. Could that be the reality of life?
Yeah. Some of the guys from Manchester have set up it was going to be an in-person thing, but now it's online. It's called Men Behaving Vulnerably. And that my answer to Ben. So I was on the Gandalf path without a doubt. You know, I did the rites, and I remember thinking, I want to be like Richard Rohr. I want to sit in that chair. I want to be able to give all this wisdom to people, and I did. I followed that path. It was a kind of calling to study these things, to understand them. I was good at it. People used to say to me, I cannot believe how calm you are. You know, when we were doing the rites of passage and something went wrong, I was always the one that would hold the team together. I understood how to do that. I understood how to speak to the men. I'm a poet, so how to use poetry, you know, I understood all of it. And very much shaped myself around the idea of the magician archetype and all of those things. And then in 2014, so we had the guys come over, we planned the young men's, then I wove the young men's, then I wove an older men's rites passage, and I was about to weave affirming. And out of absolutely seemingly nowhere, I had the most horrific attack of anxiety that would not go away. It just kept at me. I was away in Edinburgh. I had panic attack after panic attack. I came home, it wouldn't go away. So from August to December, I just crashed completely. I ended up on anti-anxiolytic tablets, diazepam, all kind. I would have taken anything that you gave me to try and get rid of this awful feeling of dread. But fortunately, at that time, I just signed up for a Jungian analysis, and my analyst kind of held me in that liminal space. The first thing she said to me was, I think what's happening to you now is probably the best thing that's ever happened to you. And we had this particular session where I said to her, you know, in order to do all this work, I felt like I was sticking my fingers into a plug socket. The archetypal energy of the magician to give me enough of that power to do these things. And she went cold, and she said, one of my best friends, who was the closest person I've ever known to a magician, electrocuted himself by sticking his fingers into a plug socket by mistake in his garden shed, and it killed him. And you know, in a moment where you just think, fuck. And she said, I think that you have been plugging yourself into an energy that doesn't belong to you. And it suddenly dawned on me that the archetypal energies that we talk about don't belong to us. We are there to serve them. We are there to put ourselves into a place where they may flow through us for a little while, but it doesn't remove any of our frailty and vulnerability. In fact, it's our frailty and vulnerability that make us human, that open us to the depths of our unconscious, to the deep self, the true self, as Richard describes it. So I've had a very salutary experience of that kind of transformation, and there is no escaping it. There is no running away from it. We will all go through these moments. I wrote a book called A Night Sea Journey. We all have them. We're meant to. It's the only way we're introduced to who we really are. Yeah, sorry, that was a bit evangelical. Yeah.
Can I dive in there, Adrian? I just want to say how utterly refreshing that is for those of us who find life is not what the adverts and the promotional material tell us it should be. I was with my son and daughter-in-law last night, and they live about 20 minutes from me, and they told me that a church near their place is called Champions Church. I just laughed, and I thought, do I have to be a champion? Do I have to be told I should be a champion? Do I have to feel like a champion? What if none of those apply? What if I just limp my way around? Isn't there more to life than having to get it right? Is it okay to get it wrong, stuff it all up, feel like a complete, like you've got it all wrong? You somehow missed it, and you're still part of the story.
There's I went to a talk by a guy called Andreas Schweitzer, who's a Jungian analyst, and he's fascinated by Egyptian mythology especially. And it says this in a book: if we are sometimes filled with and beset by profound existential angst or afflicted with the torment of depression, such an experience can intimate that even now, beneath the threshold of the consciousness, the germ of a psychic content is struggling to emerge from the collective unconscious to cause a decisive change in our lives. There is no reason to be ashamed of such anxiety or depression. Quite the contrary, someone who never knows such anxiety is most likely cut off from the deeper levels of his or her soul. It's only natural to fear the darker aspects of the self. It's only natural to fear the darker aspects of the self. I think part of what the work we do, it introduces us to the darker aspects of the self. They're not bad. They're just much more difficult. And things like breakdown, anxiety, depression, they're important gateways to a deeper sense of who we are and a deeper wellspring that the ego has no access to initially, because it thinks it's all it is. It's all there is.
Could I say that, like, it's how the crack happens?
Yeah.
Which new life comes.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a story about a village in Ireland that had these two Catholic priests who drank too much, swore too much, got grumpy and angry, and had been there for decades. And the mothership decided that these two priests had served their time and they really needed to go to greener pastures and they need to rejuvenate the parish. And so they sent these two young men to replace these two older men. And these two young men were filled with evangelistic fervor and righteousness and determination and holiness. And the village cried out to the bishop, please send back the priests you had. And the bishop asked, why would you want them back? They were terrible. They were unkempt and messy and shambolic. And the villagers said, yes, but they understood us.
Yeah. Empathy.
It's funny, there's a reading that Jesus says the truth will set you free, but that could easily be translated reality will set you free.
Yeah.
So in terms of like bringing this back to the younger men's rights theme, I suppose I guess we carry this tension with us about presenting this harsh reality with a desire to allow these young fellas to see their capacity, to find their power, to launch into their greatness, to do everything that in some ways we get shy of as we age, maybe. But we want them to be as brash and arrogant and driven and as they possibly can be, you know, to make all the mistakes, to trip over all the traps and to get bloodied and bruised. But I suppose what we bring them is a few little ideas. In some ways, for me, I often think it distills down to a group of men sharing their hearts vulnerably, and that's possibly the last thing that will remain out of the program, is that I remember when that bloke said this, and that meant everything would be all right because I wasn't alone. And if that's all we give them, then I think that is enough in a way.
I think that's really valid, Ben, and that my experience last year with you guys was that the depth from which each of you guys shared created permission for those young men to be vulnerable in their lives, and to what we've been talking about here, that life has ups and downs and that it's not all about good things, but I mean, we do want them to push and fully develop their egos, as it were, so that it does reach a point where it cracks, and they go, perhaps by us sharing, they hear that it's to not fear that when it comes, but to realize that it's just part of the next phase of life as well. But their phase of life is what you're describing. It is for them to be tenacious and to go out there and do stuff and to imagine their world and build it and that sort of stuff. They're not at the second half of life, they're at the first half of life. And so to encourage them in that is great. But I suppose it's not, there's no harm in saying to them, and a point will come where, things might seem like they're falling apart, but that's okay too, because there's more, and you will get through, and it'll drop into a deeper place, and that's okay. You know? I don't know if that fits, mate.
Mm. Absolutely.
In the Grail legend, the Parsifal kills the Red Knight. I think that's right. And he steals his horse.
Yep. And his armor. Mm.
And his armor. And it says something like he rode the horse a whole day and a whole night because he didn't know how to stop it. And I think, you know, that energy that you have at that age, which, you know, when I go walk with Tom now and he leaps over a stile and it takes me about 3 minutes to get over it because my knees don't work so well. And I envy that kind of gazelle-like fitness that he's got. But I think part of what we're trying to do is to say, yeah, ride the horse, but don't be frightened of falling off it, and don't be frightened of learning how to manage that energy and making mistakes. And I think what you were saying, this idea of it's people's presence that you remember. Tom remembers one or two things that were said on that rites of passage. He remembers the men that said it, and he remembers how it was said. He remembers Simon doing a naked haka at the other end of the river and thinking, fucking hell, well, I didn't expect that from him. Those are the things that really stuck with him and lodged in him and gave him a sense of how to fall off the horse, I suppose, and how to ride it. And that the horse won't last forever. There will be something else that will come along that you'll have to let go of the horse. So it's all of those messages, I think, that they get from the myriad of stories.
Simon, do you want to say anything about your experience weaving and ritualing?
It's been lovely to be on this call, and it would probably just be to echo and pick up the bits that really land with me, if that's okay. I did duck out to get some props, actually. One's a carved stone with a hard message from our Young Men's Rites.
Wow.
You're not in control, but you can trust your true self. And we had some journals for the guys, with little prompts and spaces to put there to contain the things that are happening and to kind of preserve the things that are happening. But yeah, just I think having woven rites and Young Men's Rites and been on one and had a chance to try and identify the essentials, because it felt like we had too much content and one of our jobs was to try and prune it back. And so the things I hear on this call are the things that we would not let go of, and they were vulnerability of many men's voices, many men telling honest story of a guy who, and the honest story of a guy who can't stop looking at pornography. We'll take the pornography story, so, and have this many voices, just radical vulnerability, and much more of a step where the elders are a bit more with the young men, really letting them in. This is my life. Take a good look. There's no bullshit here. I invite you to do the same. And that's huge. And then the others are ritual. So Adrian, you touched on it, which was the things that our body knows, and the ways that our body, you know, we spend a whole time allowing our mind to stop us from crossing some lines into some of those darker, not evil, but darker parts of ourselves. And it's often our body and therefore ritual that can step us in. So, you know, to have a thing that the young men can touch and feel, and to have a day sitting in wet grass and seeing a doe scatter across and see the sky change, like, and the body knows, and yeah, the ritual. So vulnerability, body, and just inviting them back to their own life. I guess the warning, I think, is that we don't try and be a champion church. And I think we have to weigh up whether we think it is our job to provide this whole container for young men, because Tom's story is a story of invitation back to his life and in his community and on his terms, that's unfolding. And if we try and create, because we struggle with that in Edinburgh, if we try and create a container for all the young men or the men that come to our local group, just putting too much of a load on something we can't do. And so we've just got to know what our gift is to other men, and not try and hold their hand through the journey of their life, because we're inviting men back to their own life. And, you know, it's that lovely Mary Oliver poem. As you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of cloud, and there was a new voice which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. You know, it's your own voice that keeps you company. It's not this sort of program that we set up. And we need community, but we can't be a champion church. I think that's my warning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity, and just to be on the call with you guys as well. It's a real heart warmer to see you.
Thank you for being here, Simon. So I was wondering if we could throw open any questions for Adrian, for Ben, Simon, anyone. Does anyone have any burning questions?
It's not a burning question that I have, but it's been for a while that I don't think that I agree with the energy that the second half has to be shit. And I do believe that the energies that I try to live my life with, speaking for my own, is how can I live my life according to my true self in the world that is broken? And then that's fucking hard. It is hard to find a way through it. But hope is the last one who dies, and I still believe that it is still possible. Groups like these, and searching for other groups out there, and the whole community that we all are dreaming, believing that we are initiating men into it. It is there. It is in small grounds, I believe so. And I could even say that I am finding pieces there, pieces here, and then yeah, I agree. Life is hard, but I believe it's possible to live according to your true self. And basically what I'm saying is I'm positive. I don't believe that living according to your true self, it has to be shit.
I hope that's not what I was trying to say. I think living life according to your deepest self will get you into a lot of shit, and especially living it in a world that seems to be so out of touch with any of that. That seems to have an agenda that's about so many other things that don't help. But I think being broken open in the way I have been is the most joyous time of my life in a lot of ways. It has introduced me in a way that nothing else might have done to my deepest self. Just two things really. One, when we did the first Young Men's Rites of Passage, Andy Rain's son, fantastic guy called Joel, was someone who extroverted everything. He just said everything he was thinking. And coming up to, I don't know whether you do it in Australia, I think you do a sweat lodge. We do a sweat lodge with the young men as part of the day of breaking open. And we went into this sweat lodge, and it was pitch black, and it was getting hotter and hotter. And it was the first moment those young men felt scared. You could tell that they really were taken to a place where they were not in control, and they were shitting themselves. And he just kept talking. And we were trying to say, let's be silent and all this experience. And this voice just kept saying, no, I'm not okay. I'm not okay in here. I think I need to get out. I think I need to get out. No, actually, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. Wow, I'm okay. No, I'm not okay. We just had this constant dialogue. But it was a real kind of parable of how we are in our lives. That you go into a dark, difficult space, and I'm not okay. I'm really not okay, and I think I'm going to have to get out. And my son said the same thing, that the sweat lodge was the moment where it really broke something for him. But then you realize, hang on, I'm okay. I'm okay in here. It's okay. Wow, I'm okay. And then it introduced him to all kinds of parts of himself that he had not experienced before. So I don't want to say, the first half of life is great and the second half is just shit. And it's that frailty and vulnerability that we begin to experience, and that those difficult experiences introduce us to, that are absolutely phenomenally precious. That kind of poetry that Simon just recited comes from that place. Really good poetry, the leading edge of good poetry is vulnerability. It's that willingness to see the doe across the field and feel moved to tears, or to experience something inside yourself that you didn't realize was there, that's dark and difficult, but actually it's hugely important. Like my son's experience of seeing my father lead him out of a dark place. I mean, that broke my heart. It was fantastic. And it should break our hearts. Sorry.
Thank you.
If I could just add, I think what you're talking about, when I did my rites only 2 years ago, and I've come to this fairly late in life, I guess, but what we haven't really talked about is the community. And yes, the rites were very significant to me. Very significant, was a milestone in my spiritual development for sure. But what I guess since then, and I'm continuing my journey, and I'm picking away at different things. And but I guess what I find, like through these Zoom meetings, is a real sense of community. And I think what these younger men really need is a place to go when they need it. And maybe they won't commit to go once every 2 weeks or something like that. But a group of people that they know well enough, because intimately enough that they've shared with, that they can come back to, or they can continue on a regular basis too. Because that's the growth that I've done since my rites of passage has involved growing with other people, in people that I've had my rites of passage with, and one aspect of is one aspect of that, and other people that I've met in groups that I'm beginning to feel a community with. And I think, don't underestimate the value of just having and meeting and giving them a place or an opportunity of where they can meet, and similarly, and just bond with and allow them to find the next step in their journey.
Hope.
Hope.
Oh.
Ho.
Oh.
May I speak to the imagery that Ben shared with us earlier about riding the horse and preparing the younger men for the potential future fall. The image I got with that was not necessarily about preparing them for a future fall, but of them riding the horse with their true self. So not just riding in their own ego, but riding with their true self, and bringing that to the forefront now, which allows them to ride not just with courage, but with boldness, to keep going forward in life. That was the image that I got associated with that. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.
I'll claim it, even though it was Adrian who started the image. But it's a favourite myth of mine too, Parsifal, and actually Parsifal, when he kills the Red Knight, everyone liked the Red Knight, and they were devastated, and Parsifal was just impulsive and trying to prove himself, and he had a number of fails and shamings, but his story is that he returns and becomes the wounded healer. Really, he offers, he is that great archetype in the end. So that really sits with what you're saying, Wayne, actually. Because Parsifal and the Fisher King is the story, and the Fisher King has a wound. He has a wound to his genitals that will not heal.
Doesn't sound very nice.
It's not very nice, is it? And really, he's like an older man that is wounded and has spent his entire life unhealed, and it's the young Parsifal, the young fool, that is the key. So in some ways, it's a very powerful myth for our younger men's work. That notion that it takes a fool. It's not about the wisdom and the knowledge, the innocence.
Very good. Any other questions?
Yes, I've got a question. Addressed to Ben, if I may. Can you elaborate what you meant about the weakness, like as we journey on into the second half of our lives, that you experience more weakness?
Damn. Jeez, me, wouldn't it? It's a funny thing, isn't it? The weak thing. It's something I grappled with really my whole life. I've never really liked that. Is it Paul? Saint Paul? When we're weak, we're strong, or whatever. But anyway, it's a funny thing getting, like, I'm really old now. Like, as I get older, I am like, I'm 49, right? So I'm all right. I'm okay, all right. But and I'm fit and healthy. But it's a strange thing how I have a 17-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter, and the vitality of young people is not mine anymore. And I'm just beginning to taste that and feel the frailty that is mine to inhabit as I go forwards. But I really, there's something about it that I love. I like that there's a capacity that I have to experience what is difficult in its purity, in every, like, my I guess my kind of commitment is to be with everything that I find tyrannous and overwhelming and an assault I want to be there. So, and I feel entirely weak and unprepared. My 17-year-old son is smoking dope most days, and I can't stop him. And I've done everything I can, and I don't feel any more incompetent and frail and weak when I'm confronted with the inability to launch my son into a positive engagement with life, because I see it as he's at 17 escaping and avoiding and missing out with the pure reality that life is, because it's too hard. But for me to be present to that every day and to just be completely in it, and to not go and not drink 6 glasses of wine every night or beer and avoid it and go and sit in his room, I feel completely out of my depth. I feel as useless as possible, but there's something that I am so, at the same time, I'm exactly where I need to be. This is precisely what I'm here for, is to be on this journey with my son and not know what to say, but I'm not going to leave him, and I will be there. And I feel like I'm a waste of space, but I know I'm not. I know that this is precisely where I'm meant to be. And I feel utterly weak. But I feel exactly in the right place. There's no place I should be. And I don't want to be anywhere else. And that to me is such a great joy and strength, because that's the ultimate gift, right? Surely in life is to not want to be where I was or where I'm going. It's wanted to be right here. That's, to me, enlightenment. That's heaven, is not wanting otherness. And in my utter incompetence as a father, fucking hell, like, who would have thought my shithead son would be doing this? But that is my weakest point. But I am fully alive. I'm fully alive in that space. That's how I talk about it. It wakes me up.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Ben.
Oh.
Max. See you, Rich. You got to go. So, Adrian, how can people get in contact with you, or find where all great books are sold and buy one of your books, or listen to your podcast?
So I'm just redoing my website, at www.adriangrscott.com. You'll find my books. And I do a podcast called The Anxious Poets Podcast. The Anxious Poets Podcast. You can find that on Apple Podcasts, or just search that and you'll find it. Which the Anxious Poets Podcast is exploring all of that, what Ben just said so eloquently. The territory of anxiety and vulnerability as a place of meeting with reality and finding huge joy and love in that place rather than escaping from it. So yeah. And you can get my books on Amazon as well. And just search Adrian G.R. Scott.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. Much appreciated. Thank you, Ben, for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this. I've really engaged with this. Got a lot out of it. We will put this up on our socials as a video as well, because we've recorded it. So, thank you everyone for sharing. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Adrian, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Nice to be with you. Really nice.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you, Simon and Malky, for being here as well. So,
great.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
See y'all.
And that's a wrap. Good night.
Love y'all.
God bless you.
Bye. See ya. Bye.
Good evening then.
All good? Happy? Yeah, I reckon that went really well.
That's good.
Yeah.